Imagine falling from the sky for 3 whole minutes, dropping more than 6 miles through freezing air and hitting the ground faster than a car on the highway. No one should be able to live through that. Doctors say almost no one could survive such a fall. The human body usually cannot handle hitting the ground that hard. But on January 26, 1972, a 22-year-old flight attendant named Vesna Vulovic did just that, and she lived to tell about it. This is the story of how Vesna Vulovic fell farther than anyone ever has without a parachute and survived. Before she became famous, Vesna Vulovic was just a normal young woman from Yugoslavia who really wanted to see the world. Born on January 3, 1950, in Belgrade, Vesna grew up in Yugoslavia, a country that no longer exists. It was situated between Eastern and Western Europe, and young people there were fond of Western music and fashion. As a teenager, Vesna fell in love with the Beatles. She put their pictures all over her bedroom walls. She learned English by listening to their songs. She dreamed of visiting London one day. After high school, Vesna went to college to study, but sitting in class was not exciting enough for her. When she saw a job ad for flight attendants, she knew that is what she wanted to do. Her parents were not sure about this. Being a flight attendant looked fancy, but it could be dangerous too. Yugoslavia in the 1970s had some problems between different groups who did not get along. But Vesna had made up her mind. She quit college and applied to JT Airways, Yugoslavia's main airline. They accepted her into their training program in 1971. The training was hard. She had to learn emergency steps, first aid, and how to help passengers. But Vesna did great. By late 1971, she was a real flight attendant, living her dream of traveling all over Europe. She got to visit London, her favorite city, many times. She had no idea that her love of travel would put her in the middle of the most amazing survival story in flying history. On January 26, 1972, Vesna woke up in her small apartment in Belgrade. It was her day off. She planned to meet friends, maybe go to a cafe or watch a movie. Normal things 22-year-olds like to do. Then her phone rang. It was JT Airways calling. There was a mix-up with the schedule. Another flight attendant, also named Vesna, had not shown up for work on flight 367 from Stockholm to Belgrade, with a stop in Copenhagen. This one small mix-up, getting 2 workers with the same first name confused, would change her life forever. A few hours later, Vesna was on a plane to Copenhagen, where she would join the crew of flight 367 for its last part. At Copenhagen's airport, Vesna got on the DC-9 airplane. She joined the pilot, co-pilot, and 3 other flight attendants. With 22 passengers, they took off from Copenhagen at 3:15 p.m., going up to 33,000 feet as they headed toward Yugoslavia. The flight was normal as the plane flew over East Germany and into Czechoslovakia, a country in Central Europe that existed between 1918 to 1992. At 4:01 p.m., when the plane was over a village called Srpska Kamenice near the East German border, something terrible happened. A huge explosion tore through the front part of the plane, main baggage compartment, ripping it apart in midair. The cockpit broke off from the main part, which also broke into several pieces. All 28 people on the plane lost their lives, except for Vesna. As the plane broke apart around her, Vesna, still strapped to her seat in the back of the plane, was thrown out into the freezing sky. What happened next is something no one thought was possible. Vesna's body, still strapped to a piece of the back of the plane, crashed into a snowy, tree-covered hill near a small village. By some amazing luck, 3 things came together to give her a tiny chance to live. First, the trees helped break her fall, spreading out the force as she hit them. Second, deep snow, about 3 to 4 feet thick, acted like a cushion. Third, and maybe most important, the piece of plane she was strapped to landed in a way that directed some of the force away from her body. Her skull was cracked. Both her legs were completely broken. 3 bones in her spine were broken. Her hip was fractured in many places. She had broken ribs, and she was bleeding from her ears, nose, and mouth because she was hurt inside too. By everything doctors know, she should have died right when she hit the ground. No one had ever lived through a fall from so high up. But somehow, against all odds, Vesna Vulovic was still alive. Bruno Honke, a man who lived nearby and had been a medic during World War II, was in his house when he heard what sounded like screaming from far away. Following the sounds through the snowy forest, he found a horrible scene. Pieces of an airplane scattered all over the forest and hillside. And then, among the wreckage, he saw her, a young woman, still in her seat, bloody but breathing. She was in a deep sleep-like state with a broken skull and blood coming from her ears, a sign of really bad head injury. Honky quickly helped her, covering her with blankets to keep her warm and stopping the bleeding as best he could until help arrived. Getting her to a hospital was hard because of where she was and all the snow. Locals who arrived at the scene formed a line to help carry her stretcher through the deep snow to an ambulance. She was first taken to a local hospital in Czechoslovakia before going to a special trauma center in Prague. From there, once she was stable enough, she was flown home to Belgrade. She stayed unconscious for the next 27 days, having no idea that she had made history. When she finally woke up in a Belgrade hospital, doctors told her the unbelievable news. She had fallen over 33,000 feet. It would take Vesna years and many surgeries before she could walk again. She spent 16 months in the hospital, having operations to fix her skull, spine, hip, and legs. Doctors first thought she would never walk again. The damage to her spine was so bad that the impact actually made her 2 inches shorter than before the fall. But Vesna was determined. Day after day, she pushed through the pain of therapy. She did endless exercises and treatments. After months of really hard work, Vesna took her first steps. Though she would always walk with a limp and still had problems from her injuries, she had done something doctors thought was impossible. Again, her story became famous, first in Yugoslavia and then around the world. People called her the woman who fell from the sky, and she became a hero in her country. As amazing as Vesna's survival was, what really happened to JT Flight 367 is still a mystery. The official investigation, done by Czechoslovakian authorities with Yugoslavia help, suggested a bomb in the front cargo area caused the explosion. They blamed Croatian nationalists, though no group ever claimed responsibility. But as years passed, so many conspiracy theories emerged. Some airplane experts questioned the bomb theory. They thought maybe the plane failed on its own or accidentally hit a military plane, while others speculated about government cover-ups, sabotage, or even supernatural explanations. In 2009, 2 German journalists, Peter Hornung Andersen and Pavel Finner, wrote a report saying that Flight 367 might have been accidentally shot down by Czechoslovakian air defense after the plane went off course. But Vesna Vulovic, the only survivor, always believed a bomb caused the crash. The real truth might never be known, making this one of the most mysterious stories in aviation history. Despite everything she went through, Vesna asked to go back to work at JT Airways. Though she could not fly again because of her injuries, the airline gave her an office job in booking. In 1985, she was given the Guinness World Record for the highest fall survived without a parachute, 33,330 feet, a record that no one has broken to this day. As Yugoslavia began to break apart in the early 1990s, Vesna became a political activist, speaking up for peace and democracy. She was fired from JT Airways in 1990 after joining anti-government protests. For the next 20 years, she lived a quiet but involved life in Belgrade, sometimes giving interviews about her amazing survival, but focusing more on the future of her now divided homeland. Over the years, experts in airplane safety, doctors, and psychologists have studied her case, all trying to understand how she managed to survive. Her story has helped improve emergency medicine, airplane design, and how we understand what humans can live through. Vesna Vulovic died in 2016 at the age of 66, having lived a full life that went far beyond the miracle that made her famous. Her friends found her apartment empty after not hearing from her for several days. She had lived alone and quiet in her final years. Her story remains the most amazing survival tale in airplane history, showing us how incredibly tough the human body and spirit can be, and reminding us that sometimes impossible things do happen. If you are inspired by people overcoming impossible odds, make sure you are subscribed for our next First Achievers video.